Welcome back to Living Grounded. You're here with Lila and Tim.
Hello.
And here we talk about how you can keep living grounded in Christ and answer your questions. And on Sunday, we looked at some different topics from Leviticus and how they still impact us today, and how God's holiness needs wholeness and healthiness, and how we are called to be holy as God is holy.
Mm.
What God commanded the Israelites to do was very countercultural, and while Western society shares many values with the Bible, it's certainly not holy, and sometimes even entirely twists God's design. So, how do we live holy lives? Through Jesus, who fulfilled the law, we are made positionally holy in Him. But this doesn't mean that we should continue sinning. We're called to reflect His holiness in our everyday lives and allow His Spirit and His Word to shape our views and our values. And one of the topics that we touched on Sunday was abortion.
Mm.
And I realized in Australia, people don't really talk about that.
No.
But to be honest, in Germany, where I'm from, not really.
Yeah, right. So
So,
people don't talk about it in Germany. Yeah,
no.
yeah, we're very similar, aren't we?
Yeah.
Culturally.
But it is
Yeah.
something we should talk about. And so we're going to
Yeah.
wrestle with that today. How should we, as Christians, engage with this topic in Australian culture today? What does the Bible say about abortion? Why is it a spiritual issue? Yeah.
Yeah. Look, hey, some introductory words before we get into this. Hey guys, this is something that some people may have strong feelings about, and sometimes those strong feelings will come from a personal or family history, and we recognise that, and so we just want to be sensitive to that and go, hey, we know this could hurt. I know I'm not a woman.
That is true.
I'm not a woman, and I'm not going to feel this in the same way that maybe some women will. But I also don't think that means that I have no ability to speak on the issue. I want to wrestle with what the Bible says about abortion. I want us to help reflect on that. Maybe consider a little bit about what that means for us wrestling with social justice, but also, what are some next steps forward for Christians in a country who don't talk about abortion.
Yeah.
So estimated that somewhere between 65,000 and 85,000 abortions every year in Australia. Wonder how you feel about that. How should we feel about that? Let me give you three pieces, biblically speaking, to it. The first is in Genesis. We know this, right? Humans made in God's image. Establishes the inherent value of humans. So we are the pinnacle of creation. We're different even to the angels, different to the animals. God makes us in His likeness. We are image bearers, if that I think is the helpful language, which means we're not just like another biological organism. God breathed His life into us in a unique way, so that we are body and soul, and that we are body and soul reflective of Him. And I think even Hebrews speaks to this. God doesn't seek to save angels from their sins. There is no redemption for angels. It's only humans. And you put all that together, and I think it's right what Christianity has held to, and I think the value that is inherent across the scriptures, that human life is inherently valuable. That there is something very powerful about what it means to be human in God's eyes, and so therefore it should be in ours. It should matter to us. Human life should matter. So, second biblical piece: when does a human become a human? And this really is the great wrestle of the abortion debate. And the piece we go to is Psalm 139. Do you want to read that for us, Lila? 13 to 16.
For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in a secret place, when I was woven together in the depth of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be.
Yeah, so I think gives us an understanding that in the Bible's eyes, human life doesn't begin at birth, but somewhere well before that. We could add to this moments like in Luke's Gospel when John the Baptist responds to Jesus in utero, so there's a responsive human in there, and I don't think the Bible believes in potential humans. or if it does, it's way before conception. If you want to go from Psalm 139, there are no fetuses in the Bible. There are just humans. And so, when does a human become a human? Well, when does God breathe soul life into a human? And my answer is I don't know. But what it leads me to say is probably the most likely place, the safest option is to say at conception. And I often, when I do wrestle with this issue with people who wouldn't call themselves Christians, or maybe people who would, but go down a different path to where I do, uh, you can go one of two ways on this in terms of going, well, we don't know when human life begins. And let's say I say yes to that, and I go, well, so which way should you kind of err on then? Like, do you go, well, because we don't know, it's then no worries to do an abortion at whatever point you choose? And I go, well, surely the not knowing leads you to go, ooh, we should be as careful as possible. And it's interesting that that's just not how people engage with it. And really, philosophy and science do kind of fall apart on this issue. How do you assess when a human becomes a human? Is it brain activity? Is it decision making? Peter Singer, who's an atheist philosopher, he argues that abortion is like turning a computer off forever. Is that right? Because it's just what makes us human is our brain. And I think my suggestion is actually we need to kind of go, none of those fields can make an assessment on on what it entails to be a human life. And therefore, only God can. He's the giver of life. And so it seems the best explanation for God is that life certainly begins in utero, and safest to say at conception. Which brings us to the third biblical piece. Do you want to read for us Psalm 82, 1-4?
Yes. God presides in the great assembly. He renders judgment among the gods. How long will you defend the unjust and show partiality to the wicked? Defend the weak and the fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the
So you'll see this formulation several times in the Bible, but the principle is this: an incredibly, again, similar to what we saw with Leviticus, countercultural, that God cares deeply about oppressed people. He cares for the vulnerable who struggle to care for themselves. In the ancient world, it was primarily the widow and the orphan. And I would argue in Australia, it's the unborn child. The widow and the orphan are maybe not as well as we would like, but are fairly cared for within our system. The unborn has really no one advocating for them. And I mean, just put the logic together of this, and I think this sheds a bit of a light on our culture and its engagement with social justice. 60 to 80,000 abortions a year in Australia, 73 million across the world. 73 million. Now, in my circles that I kind of walk in, particularly non-Christian, but even Christian circles, lots being said at the moment about Gaza, about Israel and Palestine. Massive outcry for justice and protection there. And I, just to be clear, I don't think it's great what's happening. War is terrible, full stop, and that situation is terrible for a number of reasons, both on both sides, I would say. But 55,000 Palestinians killed as of June. 73 million this year. That's abortion.
big number.
And can I just add an extra bit to this? Birth control. If it's right that life begins at conception, or at least that we should assume that it does, well then some of the birth control measures that we use as well are actually a form of abortion. Can I really encourage Christian listeners on this to consider what what birth control they use? Do the investigation. How do they stop pregnancy? Do they stop before or after conception? And I put my hand up here. When Alita and I got married, this was not even on my radar. I hadn't even thought about it until I read something. And I've got to ask God's forgiveness for that, because I was, a few years in. But in terms of social justice issues, 55,000 dead in Gaza, 740,000 suicides a year across the world. 9 million die from hunger. 1 in 6 women experience domestic abuse. All of these things, terrible things, wrong. And, hard to equate in terms of numbers, but I think just worth seeing, 73 million unborn children a year in abortion. And we just don't talk about it.
Mhm.
We don't talk about it in Aussie circles. So what should we do? Yeah.
What do we do?
What do we do with all that? And what am I advocating for? I think it would be a bit of a stretch to say to you all, we're going to have a rally outside PCYC. I don't think that's or at Wollongong at some clinic or something like that. I reckon it's 3 things for now for us at Village. Firstly, I think it's to be aware, aware of the humanity of the unborn. I'm always hesitant with the awareness thing. It's like when people do I'm raising money for this. No, I'm just doing the awareness part of it. You know what I mean?
Thinking about it.
Yeah. It's like there's an easiness to it. But I think in terms of a step for us, this is still a step. It's to be aware of the humanity of the unborn, to value that life might that life, even if it might mean a loss of freedom to others, that it is life for the unborn. And I think it's also about being aware, having a little of an eye to the hypocrisy of our world and the rage culture that goes on, to kind of just be aware how selective that is on certain issues and to wrestle with why, maybe, to see through it. Secondly, I reckon it's I want to gently lead us to asking God for forgiveness. For some, it might be asking forgiveness for a very deep, painful thing because of how close this issue is to your life. But for all of us, actually, I think we need to ask forgiveness. It's forgiveness for not caring. It's forgiveness for pushing this issue aside. And again, my hands up personally. I think I'm fairly content to just let this issue go. It's too big. I don't know what to do with it. So I don't think about it. I don't pray about it. I mean, if nothing else, let's be led to pray about this, that God would bring a change in our country, in the world, that God would care for a significantly oppressed group of people here. And let's cry out for that. Let's cry out for that. I want to commit to doing that. Finally, I hope this at least gives you a bit of a starter kit for engaging with others on the issue. Yeah, as it arises, for sure. I don't necessarily think you need to. Certainly with non-Christians, my suggestion isn't that you go, have you ever thought about abortion? But things like this kind of do pop up in funny ways. As in, I often find that what I'm doing at the moment these days is when people do, the outcry around Gaza or something, go, yeah, it's interesting that we've found this issue kind of a massive issue. I reckon here's an issue that's much more significant that no one talks about, and people find that very confronting. But I'm committed to doing it because I think it's important. So being able to discuss this issue with family members or close friends, being able to at least raise that question, like, have you ever thought about this? Here is a really significant thing happening in our world that we don't talk about. And even to the point of considering what might it look like for you if someone, a close friend or a family member, was to say, yes, I'm considering doing this thing. To the point of going, would you be willing, starting that conversation within your own mind and heart, to go, would I be willing to give up some of my freedom for the sake of an unborn child? As in, would I be willing to offer to people, hey, don't have an abortion. I'll adopt your child. I'll adopt the child. It's well and good to encourage others to give up some of their freedom, but are we willing to give up some of ours? Now that's tricky stuff.
Yeah.
Let's not be Christians who hide from reality or just go with the crowd. Let's be faithful followers of Jesus. And in a final word of hope, what of the unborn themselves? Mm-hmm. What does this mean for them? Now, I think if we take into account God's compassion for the oppressed and the vulnerable and his justice, put all that together, there's no proof text I can take you to exactly, But what should we expect to happen for those who never get the opportunity to see God's glory in the natural world, or most of all, hear the gospel? And I think we should expect to see them in the new creation. I think we should expect to see them living a full life in the new heavens and the new earth. Uh, but don't let that be an excuse.
Yeah.
Uh, just because God can bring good from evil doesn't mean that evil should occur.
Mhm.
So let's be reminded of God's goodness in this, even as we should pursue goodness in this world.
Mhm.
Yep.
Good word. Yes. Um, if you have any questions about this topic or any other topic or something that you think, oh, we don't really talk about that a lot, feel
Mm.
free to send it in via church from the website or the app, and we'll be happy to tackle that in another episode.
Yep.
Is there anything coming up this week in church life?
Oh, we're gonna finish Leviticus.
Yeah.
That feels big.
Ah,
Yeah, we've done it.
cool.
It's been great. So last Sunday, this Sunday for Leviticus. So I encourage you to come and, I don't know, celebrate that together with us. We'll take communion and so on. But also, yeah, school holidays is always a time where it's not school holidays for everyone, but it does mean that enough of a proportion of church maybe goes away, settles down. So it'll probably be quiet for the next 2 weeks. We're actually there's some stuff happening on the PCYC basketball court that is going to mean a few changes for church, but don't worry, you'll just rock up, church will happen, and it'll be fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Well, until Sunday or next week, auf Wiedersehen.
Ciao.